Hello and welcome back to another episode of Solutions Pod, where we talk to some awesome folks about solutions they're working on to make the world a better place. I'm Jay Harvey Lewis, and today I'm joined by Anastasia Vasovic, and our guest today is Jenica Barrett of ZeroWasteWisdom.com, who's known for her one jar challenge, where in 2015 she began limiting her waste to one jar of, non-recyclable things. Jessica, it's so good to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat a little bit more about the zero waste movement.
Yeah, awesome. So actually, I remember hearing about you quite a while ago after you had completed your first challenge, and it really stuck in my mind so much that I actually tried it in September and October, and I found it to be very useful and a lot more doable than I thought it would be. And I really should get back into it because just the conscious effort of thinking about it just helps in me to plan to not use as much non-reusable materials. So Jenica, tell us how you came up with the idea and some of the biggest challenges when you first attempted it back in 2015.
Yeah, so I had actually been collecting my waste in a jar since early 2012, but I'd been doing it month to month. So every month I would gather up all my waste and post it. But in 2015, I decided that I wanted to try it for a whole year, just because it was a much longer period of time. And I had kind of gotten to a point where my monthly waste was kind of the same amount every month. So I wanted to really push myself. It was really, really challenging, but I think I was doing it because I wanted to see, as an individual, in my own life, how could I really push myself to the limits of zero waste living? Could I get to zero? And spoiler alert, I didn't get to zero. That's pretty much impossible, but I made a lot less trash, and it was really insightful.
That's very interesting because I personally find it very challenging after I've attempted that. And I mean, recycling is easier to do because you just basically separate your trash, but to actually reduce the waste, it has to be such a conscious decision for everything you buy and everything, you do with the items you own. So it's definitely something that is probably more guidance is needed. So the content that you put out there is very, very useful. And I have to tell you that I have been going through your blog for quite a number of days now, and there is so much valuable content. So thanks a lot for sharing all that. And I just probably want to kind of summarize what's the most valuable lessons you've learned from that experience.
Yeah, I think it's two pieces. In the moment when I was actually doing the challenge, I feel like I learned a lot about what my priorities were. When you start reducing your waste, you realize really what are those pieces of trash that you're not going to be able to avoid or that you choose not to avoid. And also I learned a lot about the resources it takes and just how different my waste production looks like depending on where I live and what stage of life I am. So when I was doing that challenge, I actually moved from Bellingham, Washington to Portland, Oregon. And just seeing the difference in what bulk stores were available, what is actually recyclable, what their composting system takes, shifted my waste a lot. So I think it also taught me that individual actions are really powerful and they can make a difference, but also we are in a bigger system and there's some things that are totally out of my control. So definitely gave me a little insight into some of the kind of privilege I had in being able to do this just because I had access to those resources.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned a lot about the 4 R's on your blogs: refuse, reduce, reuse, and recycle. What is your personal relationship with those sort of rules?
Yeah, I think when I was first going zero waste, those R's were kind of my mantra, and I actually add on a 5th. So another one would be rote for composting, because it's really hard when we first get into this zero waste movement. I think so often we get focused on just like recycling. As long as I can recycle, I'm going to be fine. And really emphasizing that like refusing is such a powerful thing. And just remembering that that is on the top of the list, because that's something I can do. I can refuse to support a company that's not sustainable. I can refuse to buy that item in the first place. So often, I hear people say or get questions about, well, what do I do with X item? And rather than trying to think about like, what do you do with this plastic piece? It's like, well, how can I avoid that in the first place? How can I refuse that and swap it out? So I think like now, whenever I'm going to buy something, I kind of ask myself, like, can I refuse this? Can I outright not buy this? And then if not, kind of going down the list and being like, okay, well, am I going to be able to reuse it? Can I buy it less often? And then always thinking about that end cycle, like, where is this thing going? Is it going to go, in my trash, or can I figure out some other way to compost it or recycle it? So I really try to kind of think through those steps before bringing something new into my house.
Very interesting. Yeah, I remember you originally kind of giving me advice that went something like this: like, if you stop buying so much junk, then you won't end up with so much, which is like, I guess, pretty obvious. But then like when you're actually out there, it even in 2021, after the zero waste movement has been going for a while, it seems like sometimes the problem of like single-use plastics is kind of getting a little worse with like, I guess with the CV-19 situation. It's just like things are getting wrapped in plastic that otherwise wouldn't have gotten wrapped. I'm kind of curious if you've noticed any significant changes to like the overall like availability of zero waste options and just things that can help you avoid having things to throw away.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been a big shift during the pandemic, just because at least here locally, like a lot of places that were selling bulk goods have stopped allowing people to bring their own like bags or containers. So like here, my local co-op was kind of like, you can't bring anything in anymore. I was fortunate enough to have one place, Scoop Marketplace, who stayed open and accepted containers the entire time. But I know that that's something that a lot of my readers have been asking me about, like, what do we do now that these are kind of closed? How do we get these bulk things? And I don't have a great solution. I mean, you still need to buy food. And so that has definitely felt like a harder piece of kind of, we used to have access to something and now we maybe don't. I definitely think that as time has gone on, we found more inventive ways of maintaining that reusability aspect, even while being like really conscious about kind of the limitations we're in. I mean, just thinking about reusable masks rather than disposable ones. Just thinking about even when we're buying groceries, are we buying them in paper bags versus plastic bags? And I think a lot of people have kind of fallen into the allure of Amazon delivery. And I have really kind of pushed back against that and said, like, there's a lot of other great sustainable companies that you can still get things delivered to your door. Like, I'm not saying you have to go out and risk your health or safety, but it doesn't have to be through a company that doesn't have the greatest sustainability or ethics. And so I think it's just kind of adapting and acknowledging that, yeah, right now is different, but it doesn't mean that we have to throw out all these ideals and ignore what we've kind of been working on for so long.
Yeah, it's great to kind of understand that concept that the power of decisions and the fact that your voice counts, and you can vote with your dollar, and your decisions can really dictate the future. Like, that kind of power is it's amazing to have realizations towards it. I did see quite a bit of information on your blog about like different events and workshops that you organize. Could you expand a bit more on that? I'm quite curious.
Yeah, so I have been doing workshops for the past, well, probably 3 or 4 years now. And so when in-person workshops were allowed, I offered a variety of different workshops to community spaces or community groups on things like just general introduction to zero waste living. I also had a really popular one that was on DIY skincare, and we made things like deodorant and body butter and lip balm. And I just found that I love writing and I love blogging, but that in-person connection of really kind of putting this information in front of people was so powerful, and gave me really great feedback. Like, I always learn things from my workshops. And so I started kind of offering that kind of in conjunction with my blog. As you know, I'm a zero waste educator, so I also offer to come teach. And so a variety of companies started hiring me to come in for like an employee wellness program and teach about zero waste. So that has kind of slowed down during the pandemic. I had 15 workshops lined up for that spring, and then the pandemic hit and it all kind of slowed down. I have done a couple online, which is a newer platform for me, as everyone, but it's definitely something that as we start being allowed to go in person again, I'm definitely going to be picking that back up. And I'm still offering some online ones, and I've still kind of done some of these workshops for companies online. So it's definitely something that I continue to do and prioritize. I really like being able to have that live feedback and questions, because it's different than just reading a blog post.
Yeah, Anastasia mentioned your blog, and it really is quite a valuable resource. I'm curious, what are some of your favorite topics that you write on, and I guess what can people look forward to in the future?
Yeah, I am definitely a blogger who blogs about what is relevant in her life right now. So I definitely go through phases. I like to blog about what is most relevant in my life. And so I definitely put a lot of content out there on DIY. I've been really into that for a while. So there's a lot of recipes from DIY. I've tried like mascara and makeup products and skincare. I have recipes on there for hand sanitizer, which was really popular at the beginning of the pandemic, and bug spray. I make my own hairspray. So there's definitely a lot of recipes on there. But also just generally posting content about carbon footprints. And I think a lot of my content recently has been around food waste. I think that's something that can often get overlooked in the zero waste movement because we focus so heavily on plastics. But at least here in the US, 40% of our landfill waste is organic material. So we're kind of ignoring this whole area of this rotting food in our kitchens. So I recently posted a zero waste banana bread recipe that actually uses the banana peel. So it uses 99% of the entire thing. So just thinking about creative ways to kind of help with that. And upcoming, I have some content that's going to come out around zero waste pet care, because I'm a new rabbit owner. And so that's a new area that I'm going to be blogging about. How do you have pets and reduce your waste and still give them sustainable and organic feed? So it's basically anything sustainable, zero waste related, I'm covering at some point.
Well, I'm curious if you have any other tips in particular for people that are thinking about doing the 1 jar challenge and kind of like struggling with it.
Yeah, I think definitely just being patient with yourself and giving yourself some grace, because it is really hard, and it's not something that we often think about. And there can be a lot of guilt associated with like seeing our waste in front of us. And I think there's a level of that which is healthy and good and can be productive and really make you think. But also there's some that's like, you're just not going to get away from it. So I think using it more as a kind of experiment and a learning opportunity rather than a comparison directly to somebody else. And when you're doing it, just kind of look for those nuggets of wow, this isn't really something I need to be using. This is something that I can swap out or I know a swap for. And kind of focus on those rather than on those things that you're probably not going to get away from, because we all have those and that's okay. That's the system. So just use it as a way to identify some starting points for you and your family.
Yeah, and I've noticed it takes a while, but on the long-term strategies for this, just kind of letting the local stores in your area know that these things are important to you.
Mhm.
And I think it might seem like we're just, shouting out into the darkness, but if enough of us mention things like that, then, I have seen a few stores actually switch out from like styrofoam to paper, for example, after like
Mhm.
years of me bothering them about it.
It's definitely gaining traction. I mean, just thinking about all of the zero waste stores that have started opening up, like it's a growing movement, and I think using your voice is really powerful. And just even if it's just like advocating for like, hey, I'm here and I'm wanting to buy things in bulk, like don't take this away. I know one of our stores was considering getting rid of their bulk spices because it wasn't popular, and a whole bunch of customers were like, no, like we will continue using this, and really kind of showed the store the value of that product. So yeah, it's hard to speak up, and you're right, it does kind of sound like I'm just yelling at this blank wall. But there are people listening, and I think there's so many of us now too that our voices are really starting to join together and create a really powerful movement to follow.
Yeah, it's definitely really inspiring, especially when you do, from a personal experience, when you do start vocalizing these ideas, there is also resentment. It's not just that certain ideas may be hitting a wall. It is sometimes that, there is power going back at you. So yeah, I definitely think that it's important and it's not easy. So people should really expect that it's going to just go like that. Yeah, wow, banana bread with the peels. I'll definitely go and search for that recipe. That really did make me go like, wow. Another thing I just wanted to comment on is you mentioned with your workshops is that there are businesses that are actually asking you to come and present that to their people, to their employees. I think that's so powerful, and I would love to see more of that happening, because I think it's such a beautiful way to bind people together, and it's like, bringing employees together, having that sort of bonding experience, and at the same time, having that with a purpose. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah, it's I mean, there is room for every single type of employee and business to grow. And I think that sometimes we get stuck in this idea that you have to be a sustainable business, quote unquote sustainable, in order to think about these things. But I mean, I have worked with one was like, I don't even remember what it was, but like a financial company doing something in finances and banking and just coming in and talking about office waste. And we just did a whole presentation, and I, have done presentations at different kind of food and science teaching conferences, talking about like classroom waste and how do we integrate these ideas into our classrooms with our students. So those have always been really exciting to me, because I think that's how we kind of broaden this movement too, and really make it zero waste isn't its own movement. It's something we need to integrate into everyone and every kind of business, company, person, lifestyle. So those workshops are always especially fun, because I feel like I'm branching out and really reaching a new pool of people that could integrate this lifestyle.
Yeah, that does sound like it. And yeah, definitely sound, when you did mention it, it just in my heart, it just felt like, wow, that's a beautiful thing to do, because it's so much easier to speak to people who already are practicing it and just want to learn more. But when it's a completely new pool, yeah, as you mentioned, that's just, you get so much pleasure from introducing that idea to people who are kind of quite green to it just yet. So yeah, sounds like from 2015 when you did the One Jar Challenge, you've gone quite a way, and you've kind of branched out into all these different activities. So have you got any future plans? Anything we should look out for?
Well, my newest kind of form of media is definitely branching into the video format. It's not something I've done in the past, but I'm working on creating some, starting my YouTube channel and creating a DIY series. So rather than having a workshop that has to be at a specific time, having some pre-recorded videos that are going to be on skincare and cosmetics, to hopefully allow people a different format and still able to kind of access my content at a time that's convenient for them. So I don't have a specific release date yet, but that is what I'm working on, and I'm really excited about it.
So what are the best ways that people can find your work to support you?
Yeah, so my blog is at zerowastewisdom.com. It's definitely going to have everything you need to know on there. If you're specific to like a social media platform, my handle is Zero Waste Wisdom. So you can find me on Pinterest and Facebook and Instagram. And I'm just launching my YouTube channel too. But as long as you can remember those 3 words, Zero Waste Wisdom, you'll be able to find me.
All right, awesome. So everybody go check out zerowastewisdom.com. And Jenica, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. We really appreciate that you're doing something like so powerful to reduce the 4 pounds on average plus of trash that people are generating. And I guess for those who are outside of the US, that would be over 2 kilos. It's just an amazing amount of stuff that we generate that is so unnecessary. Yeah, so just thank you so much for what you've been doing, for staying with it after that first year. And I hope that we get to talk to you again in the future and hear some of the awesome new challenges and things that you've come up with.
Yeah, thank you for having me and highlighting this important topic.
Awesome. And hopefully you'll join us on the naturehub.com platform. And also for everybody out there, that is the sponsor of this show, naturehub.com. And we're trying to make it easier for people to access the conscious consumer lifestyle. So check out naturehub.com while you're also checking out the zerowastewisdom.com. All right, cool. Well, take care, everybody. Oh, and everybody who is watching this live on the YouTube premiere, we are going to be having a live Q&A over on Clubhouse. So if you need a invitation to that, then the first person to mention that in the comments that they need an invite, I will try to send one over to you. And so we'll be starting that in about 5 minutes. So hopefully we will see some of you over there, and Jenica will be joining us for some questions and answers live. Alrighty, so without any further delay, we'll go on over and get that set up.